Kia ora and welcome to this presentation. This is number 2 in our series regarding APA referencing. And in this presentation, we'll be looking at the inline citation. Before you write an assignment, a case study, or a reflection, you'll undertake some research on the topic. Preferably, this will be from peer-reviewed journal articles, but it may involve other sources such as a textbook or maybe a document from a website. When you write the assignment, the case study, or the reflection, you'll be talking about what you found from these sources that you've researched. Whenever you do this or present a fact, you're going to have to use an inline citation to identify the source and hence validate your writing. In academic writing, it is essential to acknowledge where the information in your written work comes from. Not doing this is effectively stealing the idea from someone else. Basically, in an academic setting, it appears that you're taking credit for what someone else has said or demonstrated. You could compare it with a report you had written for your boss, and it gets presented further up the food chain, but without your name on it. I know you'd think that would suck and seem rather unfair. But back to reality. In academia, you must tell the reader where you found the information. If you don't, it's a severe breach of the academic code. It's called plagiarism, and it can get you into a major amount of hot water. So, we use an inline citation system to avoid accusations of plagiarism and to identify the source of the information. So let's look at how this is done. It's pretty simple, really. APA referencing uses the author's name and the date to identify the source of the information. So when you write an inline citation, you place the author or the author's last names and then the date within parentheses. It's that simple. So let's have a look at some examples. When researching the treaty principles and their application to healthcare, I came across this article. It has identified that integrating kaupapa into training methods has a long-term effect on supporting and encouraging Maori health practitioners. It made me think that this could be beneficial to paramedicine in attracting Maori into the paramedic training programs. Now, as you look at this, you should be able to see who the authors are, so there's 4 of them, and what year the article was published, namely 2004. If I were to write this as a suggestion in my assignment, I could state that integrating Te Ao Māori into training methods has been shown to support and to encourage Maori health practitioners. I really want to say that training institutions for paramedics could emulate this in order to foster greater participation. But to acknowledge the source of my opinion, I need to place an inline citation adjacent to the information that it relates to. So how would this appear? Let's have a look. So now you can see that I have placed the 4 authors and the year that they published adjacent to the piece of information that relates to their article. Note that I haven't actually placed it next to my own opinion. I've just used the information Sheenan, Jansen, Ruka and Kringle have offered to inform my opinion. There is an alternative method to doing this, and let's have a look at that. I can do this by placing the author's name in the main part of the text and just add the year of publication in the parentheses. Now this might seem subtle, but it can be a great way to emphasize the authority or the importance of who is saying something in comparison with what is being said. So in this example, I've gone to the Ministry of Health's website. I'm looking for information on models that they want to use to improve health outcomes for Maori. The overarching structure is known as He Korowai Oranga. So I'm looking at the bottom part of that triangle, and it has participation as a foundation element to get this model established, and that's what I want to say. So my sentence reads, the Ministry of Health, 2019, have identified participation as a foundation element in the He Korowai Auranga, which is the overarching framework to improve Maori health outcomes. I also want you to note that in this case, we're using information from the Ministry of Health's website. There are no individual authors identified, and this is why we're using the organisation's name to replace that of an author. Because I've already recognised the Ministry as the author, the only information I require to put in the inline citation is the year of publication. At this point, it would be useful to talk a little about paraphrasing. Paraphrasing information means that you need to present what you're saying in your own words. You can't utilise the same words or the same sentence structure as the source material. Doing this is another form of plagiarism, and of course that has negative consequences. The grading tools used by assessors will identify this sort of plagiarism. They will detect when some of the words within a sentence have been replaced by synonyms, so you can't just merely disguise it by changing a few words around. In the example given here, the information is correct, and it does have an appropriate inline citation. However, the highlighted sections have identified where words and sentence structure are the same as in the source information. If this happens, the assignment's going back. It's going back with a D, and at best, it will need to be rewritten. I do have some pointers around how to help out with paraphrasing. Firstly, decide what concept or idea you are discussing in the paragraph that you're writing. Try to think of it from the point of view of what point you are trying to make. It might be why it's important or how the knowledge can be used. It might be how does it relate to the point that you're making with the paragraph. Or you might want to think of it from the point of view that I'm just trying to explain this to somebody else without looking at a piece of paper first. Once you've got some framework, then write your sentence, and this will help you avoid incorporating the same sentence structure that the original author has used. And that brings us to the end of this section. So essentially, we've talked about inline citations being a very important way of acknowledging where you get your information from. APA uses a very simple system of identifying the author's name and the year that's published. And there are two basic variations. One is if the information is the most important thing, in which case I put the author's names and the date in brackets. Alternatively, just to change things up, or where I feel that maybe the author is more important than the information, then I might write the author's name into the main text and just use the date of publication within the parenthesis. All right, I'll let you go off and have some practice. I'll see you in the next session. Ka kite.